Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of the Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto. I'm here with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Now, Michael, welcome to Season 10.
Yes. Thanks, Brad. This is going to be a great one. We have a mix of some episodes, like today, where just the two of us get to tell the story, and throughout the season, we're going to sprinkle in some guests.
Awesome. I can't wait to see who our guests are. Tell the audience, though, Michael, what is our Season 10 theme?
Well, as a business and healthcare law firm, we meet a lot of interesting people and learn their amazing stories. This season, we are spicing things up a bit.
Awesome.
We are here to talk about OPP. Other people's problems.
Wow. Are we going to go back in a time machine to talk about some famous song by Naughty by Nature?
Well, there's a small demographic of our audience that's nodding their head right now and probably singing the song. And don't start, Brad.
Okay.
However, we did learn from Riley and our younger crowd at the office that they'd never even heard of this song.
All right. Well, let's tell them what are we going to do with OPP.
We're going to tell public stories in the news. And so they're not going to be our client stories. So there'll be stories that people are generally familiar with, although some are more local or more healthcare based, so maybe not. And then talk about some legal lessons that can be learned from these fascinating stories.
I love it. So what's our OPP story today?
Slow down, Brad.
Oh, sorry.
We have some other things to get to first.
Sorry, I was getting excited.
Do you remember our conversation on a prior episode where we discussed our experience flying on a private jet?
Yeah, not only do I remember you actually posted a picture on our YouTube page of us with that nice private jet. And I think I also may have recalled that you, not me, may have eaten the last 2 bags of animal cookies that was saved in the plan for the owner's 5-year-old.
Well, now it's fake news because you ate 1 bag.
What?
And then I got on to you, and I may have then taken the last bag. But let's not talk about that again.
Yeah.
Okay. So we touched on this whole experience of flying in a private jet during the red flag season when we were talking about the episode on phantom stock.
Yeah, our phantom plane.
Yes. One of the points of our discussion, Brad, was the differences in wealth when it comes to plane ownership.
Yes. And that's when we started talking about FU money, right?
Yeah, being FU rich. That's right, Brad.
Yeah. And for those who don't know what is FU rich or having FU money, we thought, Michael and I actually thought we understood what that meant, but we learned we were very wrong because, owning a plane we thought was FU money. No, owning a plane that you can stand upright in, you don't have to crouch to kind of board in, that's a private plane, that's FU money.
And if you have to crouch when boarding, you're just ordinary money?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my mind was blown recently, Brad, as I learned there is a whole other level of wealth to differentiate the FU rich crowd. I read a fascinating article about the underbelly of yacht ownership.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that you use the word underbelly to describe yacht ownership because that sounds seedy, but it really isn't. But you made the mistake of sharing this article with me, and then I made the mistake of sharing it with everyone I know. And all I know is our eyes were wide open as to what we thought was FU rich, and quickly learned there is this next level that I don't even know how you could even define it, because FU rich seems small and potatoes compared to this.
You must have skipped the part of the article where they were talking about the seedy elements, but yes, it is crazy, fascinating. And they were talking about not just yachts, Brad. They were talking about the world's biggest yachts.
Yeah.
The largest yachts are more than 500 feet. They're on the same scale as a naval destroyer.
Yes, and I've had the pleasure of seeing some of these yachts when I've been in Miami and San Diego. And it's kind of funny. You'll see like a yacht with, oh, that one just has a little dinghy in the back. And, oh, that one has a motorcycle. And then you're like, oh, that has a whole boat that holds a bunch of people. Oh, my gosh, that one actually has a helicopter on it. So it just, as you keep watching it, it's amazing.
Yeah, and the point, one of the points of the article is that airplane ownership is just transportation.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
At some point, all the super wealthy have as big of a plane as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
The article points out that the big ship is more than transportation. They are more about status. The larger, the better. If it has a working crew on board and is more than 98 feet long, it's called a super yacht.
Okay.
Anything more than 230 feet is a mega yacht. And anything more than 295 feet is a giga yacht.
Yeah. And what was fascinating was, this seems like a lot, but according to the article, the world contains 5,400 super yachts, so that's 98 feet or longer, and about 100 giga yachts, which is about 230 feet long. So,
rarefied air at the giga level.
Yeah.
Well, there are unwritten rules of status when it comes to the boat. Probably not too surprising. A Dutch boat, for example, they say in the article, will hold its value better than an Italian boat. Who knew? Oh. There are other rules like that. And Brad, I'm about to say something, and you've got to check the 13-year-old inside of you and keep it clean, okay?
All right.
Unsurprisingly, the most telling statistic for your yacht is LOA, length overall.
Okay. I'm holding it together here. Well, that's, I guess, unlike a plane. There is no limits to LOA.
Yes, and we need to power through because I can see this derailing very quickly. The craziest part of the yacht story is just shocking that because of international rules conceived after the sinking of the Titanic, back when you were born.
Yeah.
I beat you to the punch.
Yeah, you did. I was about to ask you, weren't you on that boat?
Yes. Well, so rules that came out of the sinking of the Titanic state that pleasure yachts are permitted to carry no more than 12 passengers.
So the giga yacht, the mega yacht, the super yachts all can only carry 12 passengers. That's just crazy.
Yeah. And the catch is that this rule doesn't apply to the crew, so there's no limit there. So the wealthy, or the FU wealthy, distinguish themselves not just by the LOA of their boat, but by the size of the crew that they hire. And so there's sometimes up to 50 crew members looking after 12 guests.
I think that's giga FU money, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe that's where we met. So, Michael, with only 12 people allowed on the boat, I think some hard conversations are going to have to be had when you're trying to ask which guest is going to get to join you.
Yeah, I mean, they talked in the article about you better have something of value to bring if you're going to be a guest.
Like a Saints fan.
Probably not.
No, that's not a thing of value.
And probably not being really smart in compliance.
Oh.
Now, maybe being a podcast star.
Yes.
We need to bump our audience.
We got to get a payola jar.
Yes.
Better.
Yeah. I think we're very far away from being invited in the 12 to a giga yacht, but maybe like on a sunset cruise on a cruiser boat or something.
Maybe.
Well, as mind blowing as all this is, Brad, the yacht story is actually tame compared to the highly public OPP story that we will tell today.
All right, Michael. Nice segue. I guess it's time for today's OPP story.
Well, let's start by introducing the main characters to today's story. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Who? I've never heard of them.
Well, even though that statement is actually believable, Brad, I know for a fact that you at least know Johnny Depp. I would bet that you have a Pirates of the Caribbean poster hanging up in your bedroom at your house.
All right, Michael. I did think we discussed that there are certain personal aspects of my life we're not supposed to talk about on this podcast, so you cannot bring up my Pirates of the Caribbean boat collection either, okay?
You mean yacht?
Oh, yeah, they're yachts. Oh, no, I don't have them, though, anyway.
Oh, yeah, okay. We won't go there.
All right.
And obviously, Johnny Depp is about as famous as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
He's been named the sexiest man alive twice. And Brad, don't say it. You've never named. Let's move on. Johnny Depp has starred in hit movies like Edward Scissorhands, Donnie Brasco, of course, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. He's been nominated for 3 Oscars.
Yes, but unfortunately, as most of us who know who Johnny Depp is, there is a dark side, and I know that back in 2017, there was some articles that were coming out about his nature in drinking and a lot of financial troubles.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in the media on the personal and financial side, but I'm guessing he's pretty interesting in that he's been invited on a Giga yacht more than once.
Yes, I could see someone wanting to have one of their limited invites for a passenger to have Jack Sparrow on their boat.
Fair, true enough. Well, Amber Heard was just beginning to become a household name when she first met Johnny Depp in 2009. They actually co-starred in a movie called The Rum Diary. I personally was not familiar with Amber Heard. Had you heard of her before this trial?
Not really, and I could see Johnny doing really well in something with rum in it, though. But I don't think I saw The Rum Diary either. I do know that I remember that her big break was when she got into the Aquaman franchise.
Right. Well, I think I first became aware of her in the tabloids when they were getting a divorce. So they actually were not married that long. They were married in 2015, and Heard filed for a divorce in 2016.
Yeah, that's not very long. And I know that the lawsuit, so that's, I'm trying to get this. Lawsuit happened in 2022. They're divorced in 2016. What's going on? Who's suing who and why?
Yeah, no, I mean, the timeline is actually really interesting. I mean, they were married back 2015, divorced a year later, and then all of a sudden they're going to trial in 2022. Well, Johnny Depp sued Amber Heard for defamation. He actually filed the lawsuit in 2019, and we'll touch a little bit on more of that in a minute. So he sued her for defamation. The allegation tied to a headline in an article written by Heard. Amber apparently published an article in the Washington Post in 2018, so again, after the divorce, with a headline that said, "I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change," end quote.
All right, so a lot to unpack there, but for our audience who just started hearing you talk, you threw out a vocabulary word for the day that I think we need to go back to. What is defamation?
Fair enough. Defamation is a statement that injures a third party's reputation. So it's we learn about torts in law school bad. The
torts are awesome, audience members.
Yes. The tort of defamation includes both libel, which are written statements, and slander, which are spoken statements.
Mm-hmm.
State common law, and there's statutory laws that govern defamation actions. And each state varies in their standards for defamation and the potential damages that can go with it.
All right, Michael, thank you for bringing us back to Law School 101. Back to the story. It doesn't mention Depp in that headline that you just talked about in the Washington Post. So how do we get to this lawsuit? Yeah,
I mean, it's a fair point. So Depp's not mentioned. I'll say this. This is what the statement, the whole lawsuit was, I'll say it again, was about. It said, quote, "I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change." Well, I think there's some context that's missing here, and that the implication from Johnny in the lawsuit is that she's talking about him. And so Depp argued in the lawsuit that Heard is implying that Depp abused her over the course of their marriage.
Right, and this goes back to, I guess, part of the divorce. She actually accused him at one point of directly of domestic violence, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, Heard applied for a TRO in 2016 on the grounds of domestic violence.
All right, Michael, you keep throwing out these vocabulary words. I'm going to jump in this one. For our audience members that don't know, a TRO stands for a temporary restraining order. TRO is generally approved. Well, it has to be approved by a court, and basically orders a restraining of one person from doing something to another person. That could be, in this case, with a marriage or keeping people away from each other. It could also be a TRO for preventing someone from opening another medical practice. So TROs are used all the time, both in both civil marriages and in contract enforcements.
Yeah, and kind of interestingly, when they reached a settlement for their divorce in 2016, Heard withdrew her request for a restraining order. So there was never really this legal determination one way or another about whether Johnny had abused her back during that time.
Yeah, that probably makes sense because, again, I don't remember much media hoopla out there, when they settled the divorce that there were any domestic abuse allegations.
No, you're right, but it's kind of weird. There was definitely news about it. When she filed for a TRO, it made the news, but it kind of faded away. I actually saw an article recently, kind of tying with this recent litigation that, again, this is going to go back to people that know what OPP is, but back in the day, there was an actor named Rob Lowe who had a sex tape, and it was like in the news, and then it was gone. Everybody moved on almost immediately, and that's kind of what happened here. It was like in the news one day, and people moved on the next.
So for our listeners, yes, Rob Lowe is still alive. He did not mean anything by that. He just meant that only a few old people listening to us actually remember anything that happened with Rob Lowe and the sex tape.
Yes.
So what's changed, and why was this such a big deal that made this article written 2 years ago? Like, what happened? This is well after the divorce.
Yeah, so the divorce was 2016. She wrote an article in 2018, and obviously it was insightful enough that he wanted to file a lawsuit over it. Well, the world changed in 2017. So kind of unrelated, the Me Too movement started in 2017 following the accusations against Harvey Weinstein. This kind of brought the prior allegations of the restraining order into a different perspective. Amber Heard was named an ambassador on women's rights for the ACLU.
Okay, so going back, I'm trying to get all these moving parts here. They were married, then they were divorced, and then there was a settlement, and now Johnny filed some defamation suit. Remind the audience, when did he file it?
Yeah, it's hard to keep it all straight. So 2016 divorce, 2017 Me Too movement hits, 2018 Washington Post article written by Amber Heard, and then in 2019 Depp filed the lawsuit seeking $50 million in damages.
Okay.
And it just took it until 2022 for that lawsuit to go to trial because of all the discovery and the back and forth. As we saw play out in the media, a defamation lawsuit gets super messy. Mm-hmm. Johnny Depp, to prevail, essentially had to prove that the statements or the insinuation that he hurt her were untrue. In other words, he had to show that he did not abuse her.
Yeah. And for those who read the suit and or started following it, the lawsuit and the strategy in trying this case seemed to actually be trying to show that Amber Heard was actually the abusive person inside of this marriage and not Johnny.
Brad, I know where you're going here. We got to keep it clean. You want to point out the evidence presented in trial that Amber went big potty on Johnny Depp's bed, right?
I wasn't going to point that out, but now that you said it, but I have to say that it was fascinating to see all the evidence presented in this poop incident. And apparently this was a power move by Amber.
Yeah, it made it very disturbing. I mean, not that someone going poop on someone's bed isn't big enough, but the fact that it was a power move, oh my goodness. Okay, you sucked me in, Brad.
I did not.
Okay, we're moving on. All the dirty laundry.
Okay, yeah, that's that's not fair.
More than just the sheets came out during this trial for both of them. Yet the trial captivated the nation, with the social media having millions of followers voting for Johnny or voting for Amber.
Yeah, as I recall, the social media jury, which audience members does not actually has a say, but it's a public say, millions and more people were favoring Johnny over Amber in this trial. And I also know in our office, I can at least vouch for about 90% of the female staff were on Team Johnny, and they had the trial on TV every single day at our office.
Yeah, and to be fair, neither of them came out, Johnny or Amber, looking great.
No,
I mean it was bad, but Team Johnny, at least in the public opinion, was a big thing, and it probably was the biggest win for him ultimately because it was probably going to restore his career. Mm-hmm. But actually, this Team Johnny movement on social media is what played out in court.
Yeah, the
jury awarded Depp $15 million in damages, including $5 million in punitive damages. So agreeing that statement in the 2018 Washington Post was defamation. The actual award was reduced by the judge, just kind of procedural stuff and caps on damages that brought the total down to $10.35 million. What's not talked about too much is that Amber Heard actually had a counterclaim for defamation, and she was awarded $2 million for her counterclaim, and it was an allegation that Depp's attorney had defamed her as well.
Whew. All right, Riley, can you do us a favor? Can we get some air purifiers in this room, because this all just feels this kind of gross after all. So audience members, I'm sure you're just trying to figure out what to do next. Let's just go to a commercial, Michael, and on the other side, let's talk about how defamation can come into play even for our listening audience.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Now, Michael, this season our theme is OPP. And how in the world can we take this messy story that has Poopgate involved with Johnny and Amber and possibly apply this to our everyday listeners and business owners?
Well, first, let me applaud you, Brad. You may finally be turning a corner now that you've reached the age of 50 and you're able to keep it together for the most part. And if I do say so myself, I'm proud of me too.
I'm about to give you a hat tip myself.
All right. Well, we've touched on reputation management in prior episodes, and our partner Jeff Siegel talks about it all the time. In fact, he has an entire business built around reputation management. It is a business risk that comes from people going online to post reviews about a business. Now, these can be positive, of course, and there's part from a business strategy perspective in managing that, but they also can be negative, and there's kind of a strategy and some compliance things you want to navigate on that front.
Yeah, and for our listeners who are in the healthcare business, obviously you have to remember there's patient privacy concerns that do play out when a practice does acknowledge a person as a patient online. And, of course, it gets even messier if they start sharing personal information on this patient while responding to them.
Yeah, all good points. And there's something kind of stepping back from healthcare for a moment, that an individual has a strong protection to post comments online about a business. They kind of classically will cite to the First Amendment of the Constitution on free speech that protects them to say their opinions about a business.
Yeah, and it's even more complicated. Is many states actually have something called anti-SLAPP, and that's 2 Ps, laws that allow someone to recover damages if a business owner sues someone for posting a review online. This law, the intent of the law is built around the protection, as Michael said, around your right to the First Amendment. So in theory, if a business that is the 800-pound gorilla has money and they start bullying you around by trying to sue you or suing you, preventing you from posting a review, you have now an opportunity in these states that have anti-SLAPP laws to then turn around and basically you say you can't bully me from preventing me from doing that. So those audience members who are in those states be very well aware of those.
Yeah, it definitely puts some skin in the game about a business attacking someone for posting a negative review, but an individual can still cross the line.
Like pooping on the bed?
Well, hopefully, Brad, that's intuitive for most people.
Yeah.
I hope, and that's, I won't say it, but that's not defamation.
Oh.
It's close.
It's a different
word.
Different word.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if someone...
Uh-oh, audience members.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have complimented myself. But if someone posts a review online that's untrue, it can give grounds for recovery to a small business.
Yeah. And we hear stories of clients, unfortunately, usually our doctors, who fight the big fight and they sue their former patients for defamation. allegedly, posting lies online. I know that Jeff has talked about that. There are these competitors that will do that, and so yes, we understand that.
Yeah, it's messy in the sense that someone says something negative about the business, and that there's a defensiveness that comes in, and they're saying it's not true, and so they want to stand up for the business wants to stand up for people making stuff up. But just like the Depp trial, if you go there, these become messy and expensive. These lawsuits can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and take years to resolve.
Yeah, and I think in Johnny's case, it costs millions of dollars in legal fees.
For sure.
And as we've trying to avoid saying it, but the dirty laundry did come out, Michael.
Yes, it did.
And our partner has actually told the story to us, and maybe even on podcasts before, but he talks about the Streisand effect when you file a lawsuit. And for our audience who doesn't know, Michael, why don't you tell them what the Streisand effect is?
Yeah, it was interesting. And this was, I don't even think it was a defamation case. I think it was a privacy case. But generally, and you can correct me if I'm missing something, Brad, I think that there were some photographers in a helicopter that took pictures of Barbra Streisand's estate and were going to post it on, some online website. Or they did. And then she decided to sue for, I guess, invasion of privacy. And that lawsuit actually drove more people to the website, millions of people to the website. And it probably would have garnered very little attention had she never even filed the suit in the first place. So the suit itself is what brought attention to the pictures.
Yes. So hence the Streisand effect. So we understand, look, as Michael said, if you're being defamed in public, most people will want to lash out to protect their name, their reputation they've built up, the goodwill. But, attacking the patient and publishing that post can actually be larger issues like the Streisand effect. If you're out there attacking your patient online, how are these other people going to look to you as a place that they want to go? And if we said this in other ways, it's best if you can. If you do have a negative review, the first thing you can do is try to take the conversation offline. Many of the times when we have these conversations with our clients, they actually know who posted the negative review. And sometimes just by having that conversation offline, being nice to that person, they might even take it down. Look, if that doesn't work, the practice should have one response. You shouldn't be and it needs to be reasonable, and it shouldn't be a debate going back and forth with that patient. The response that's ultimately at the end of the day, you have your opportunity to show that you're reasonable, that when you come, you're going to try to find a way to educate the public. You're going to address whatever the concern was, but ultimately, very, very importantly, you're doing it in a way that does not address the author directly.
Yeah, I mean, kind of wrapping up the episode, I think we have to acknowledge that if you're a business and you see something posted about you that's negative, that's emotionally triggering. Mm-hmm. If you see something that's posted that's not true in the first place, that's like compounding the negativity. And while being extra emotional might make you interesting, maybe even interesting enough to get invited onto a yacht, maybe not a giga yacht, but maybe a super yacht, it's not going to do well with, for your business, because you have so many potholes that you can hit if you run on that emotion and react with the emotion, whether it's, unforeseen consequences like the Streisand effect that we just talked about, or getting in a lawsuit that you regret later because of how much money you're spending, or actually creating liability for yourself by the way you respond. You just got to be super careful when you get triggered to make sure you calm down and try to kind of sort through what's the best way to deal with the issue.
Good stuff, Mr. Byrd. Well, guess what, audience member? Next Wednesday show, we discuss the world's richest man getting in a fight with a social media company. That's right, the OPP of Twitter versus Elon Musk. Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe, make sure to give us a 5-star rating, and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.